Good evening, explorers. I'm Exploratory from the Nevada Conservation League, and I'm going to be teaching you today all about the vivid dancer damselfly. Make sure to tune in each week on our Nevada Conservation League Facebook Live page, where I'll give you a special preview on a Nevada native. But this week, I'm going to be teaching you about the vivid dancer damselfly, also known by its scientific name, Argia vivida. Argia being the genus, vivida being the species. And if you didn't know this already, the vivid dancer is actually the state insect of Nevada. Who knew? And you may have heard of dragonflies, but maybe you've never heard of a damselfly. So let me give you the cross comparison so you'll be able to tell the difference. So on the left-hand side, I have a dragonfly picture. On the right-hand side, I have a damselfly. So the easiest way to tell the difference is the dragonfly are much larger, bigger than 2 or 3 inches, and they're much wider. So you can see their abdomen or the base of them is much wider, it's much broader. Whereas damselflies, they're very small, much smaller, about 2 or 3 inches in length, and they have a slender abdomen, so it's nice and skinny. For their eyes, dragonflies keep their eyes together, they're almost touching, whereas damselflies, there's a separation. Their eyes are on the side of their head, so there's a clear forehead in between. For dragonflies, they have unequally sized wings. So if you look at the dragonfly, the first 2 wings are not as big as the bottom 2 wings. Whereas a damselfly, you could see the wings are almost evenly shaped. They fold over onto each other and they match each other equally. And then the easiest way to tell them apart is when a dragonfly rests, they keep their wings out to the side. Whereas damselflies, they'll keep their wings folded and along their back, their abdomen. Both of them are part of the order Odonata. They're usually called odonates. And the damselfly is part of the suborder Zygoptera, which comes from ancient Greek zygos for even, optera for wing. And this is because their wings are even-winged or essentially the same shape. So that's the name of their suborder. Easy way to not get them mixed up. And I want to give you guys, you explorers out there, a nice size comparison on what the damselfly really looks like. So you can see in this picture right here how tiny they are. About 1 to 2 inches in length. So you got to keep your explorer eyes out if you want to see these damselflies out in the open. But if you want to find them, this is their range. You can find them all across Nevada. You can find them in California, pretty much all the western states of the United States, even up into British Columbia, Canada. So you might be asking yourself, Exploratory, why is a damselfly who's found in so many regions our state insect? Well, actually, it was signed and approved by Jim Gibbons in 2009, and it was all due to a contest. So public schools were allowed to nominate a certain insect that may be chosen to be our state insect, and it was actually Mr. Slater's 4th grade class in Beatty Elementary School in Las Vegas that nominated the vivid dancer. And really quick, I'm just going to read the description that they put down for them choosing the vivid dancer, just so that you can get in the minds of Mr. Slater's 4th grade class oh so many years ago. We voted for the Argia vivida because of its colors. The adult male is rich blue with clear wings that appear silver when rapidly beating in sunlight. Silver and blue are Nevada's state colors. Next, we learned that the vivid dancer damselfly is abundant in all 4 regions of our state: north, south, east, and west. Its habitats in springs and ponds all across Nevada, we thought it was important that the state insect represent and prosper throughout the entire state. There are 55 state insects. There are 24 butterflies, 17 bees, 7 ladybugs, 2 dragonflies, but there is not one damselfly. The selection of the vivid dancer would reinforce Nevada's status as unique among the states. And with that great description, they voted for the vivid dancer to be our state insect back in 2009. So for 11 years now, this little guy has been our representative. So, you know this is our state insect. Let's go into detail on how to identify one. So this is a great picture of a vivid dancer, the male. They are appropriately named for the male adults with their darker blue hue, that vivid blue color with the black markings along their body and their abdomen. Of course, there are actually a lot of blue damselflies, not only in Nevada, but all across the United States. And because of their size, it may be really hard to tell them apart. So I'm going to use my exploratory knowledge to see if I can help you guys be able to identify these in the wild. So we're going to dive into some scientific terms. So I got my little scientific diagram to help me out. So first off, they're vivid blue with black markings. Got to keep an eye out for the blue. The thorax, or the back of the damselfly, has a stripe that's black with an urn shape. So it's kind of this type of shape. And it has side thoracic stripes pinched at mid-length. What that means, on the side of the bodies, there's little stripes that extend from about their arms to their wings. And then along their abdomen, so you'll see the long part of their body, that's their abdomen, they have stripes with triangular black streaks. So you can kind of see that along there. And the abdomen in our scientific realm are actually segmented and numbered from 1 to 10. So you can see on my little chart right here, number 1 is the one that's really close, attached to the body, and number 10 is at the very end where the abdomen ends. So from 1 to 8, you could clearly see those black stripes and those triangular streaks. But from 8 to 10, the very last 3 segments, it is known for having a cooling color, sometimes becoming more violet. So if you look closely on this picture, you can actually see how the vivid blue on the thorax and the abdomen, or the body, and the top of, or the beginning of the base is very vibrant blue. But if you look at the last 3 segments, it's much cooler color, much lighter color. So that's a giveaway for it to be the vivid dancer. Now, like I said, there's plenty of blue damselflies out there, and I'm going to have you know how to tell them apart. So this is actually a guide from when I was doing damselfly and dragonfly surveying for the Fish and Wildlife Service. I thought I'd bring it along to help you guys out. So this is how to tell apart dancers, which is what our vivid dancer is, and bluets. So if you look at the very first picture, the dancer usually folds its wings above the abdomen. So if you look closely, you can see wings, then space, then the abdomen. Whereas bluets, they'll hold their wings alongside the abdomen. So you don't see that gap. It's resting right on their back. And because the dancers hold their wings above their abdomen, their wings are usually clapped or touching together when perched. Whereas the bluets, because it's folded along their abdomen, they're not clapping or touching at all. They're leaning up against the abdomen. And if you get really close, you can see that damselflies actually have little hairs along their arms. These are called tibial spurs. And the tibial spurs on the dancers are much longer than on the bluets. And you can tell from these pictures, dancers are a little bit longer, the bluets are a little bit shorter. Of course, because they're so tiny, you're going to need a magnifying glass or some binoculars in order to see this. So make sure to get those out while you're exploring to really see the details on these damselflies. And I may say this is all for the male damselfly. Here's a picture of a female vivid dancer. And you may be asking, Explorer Tori, this is not very vivid. What's going on? Yeah, it's actually that the females aren't that bright blue color. They're usually tan, a dull color, usually gray, kind of like the same color as this rock. So they're nowhere near as bright and vivid as their males. Sometimes females can be the same color, but more likely they're going to be this light tan color. And when the males and females mate, the male will use his claspers, or this clasp at the end of his abdomen, segment 10, to latch on to the back of the female's neck, kind of right next to her, behind her eyes. And they'll stay like this until she lays her eggs. The male is defending his territory, making sure that no other males will mate with the female. And so he'll stay like this pretty much up until she lays her eggs. And this formation is called tandem, though sometimes it's called wheel or heart-shaped because of the cute formations they make when their abdomen's moved. So if you get really lucky in the wild, you'll get to see, especially during springtime when they're mating, this cool formation that looks exactly like a heart. I hope you get to see it, explorers. So like I said, they'll stay this way until she lays her eggs. Usually the male will help her get into the water. She may completely submerge herself to lay her eggs, and she will lay her eggs in water. The baby damselflies, or the nymphs, will complete their entire life cycle in the water. It's crazy. Sometimes they'll have a way to shoot out water from their behind, and they'll push them along to be able to catch prey. It's really cool. And they'll continue the molt, lose their old exoskeleton, and then as they do, they'll look more and more like your normal damselfly. And then once the nymphs are ready to go up into the water, they will shed one last time of their old exoskeleton and emerge out with their wings. If you get lucky, you might be able to see their final molted exoskeleton. This is called exuviae. So keep an eye out next to streams and ponds where they rest around and lay their eggs, and you might see this really cool thing. Once they emerge, they're called tenrioles, and the damselflies are super transparent. You can almost see through them. They're very light, very flimsy. I actually have this photo from when I was doing surveying of a tenriole itself. You can pretty much see right through it. It almost looks like the exuviae, the exoskeleton, but nope, that's a damselfly that just came out of the water. And I have this picture. These two pictures were taken 6 minutes apart from each other. So the first picture is when they first came out of the water. They kind of look a little flimsier. You can see the wings are kind of more stuck apart with each other, and the coloring is not as vibrant. And within 6 minutes, you can kind of see more pronounced markings. The body doesn't seem so flimsy, it's more rigid, and the wings are not stuck together as much as they were 6 minutes ago. So once they emerge out of water, they'll quickly circulate blood through their body, through their veins, and help with that floppy appendages and get them ready to start spending their life flying. So within a few hours, they'll pretty much be flying most of their life. And I know what you're thinking, these little tiny guys, they are probably very harmless, right? Nope, these guys are little tiny predators. So they eat small, soft-bodied insects, including aphids, mosquitoes, gnats, and flies. They'll eat pretty much anything that's flying around, and I've heard that they might even eat ants or termites if they're nearby in a nest. So not only are they great predators, but they actually are great predators to a lot of bugs that we consider harmful to us humans. So the next time you see a damselfly in the wild, make sure to give them a thank you for all the great work they do in our environment and our ecology, getting rid of these harmful bugs. So this is a really cool image. This is actually a damselfly in the fossil record. Zygoptera, if you remember, is the suborder of the damselflies. They have fossils going back over 250 million years ago of these guys in the wild. Always of their adult forms. they do try to find their larval states, and they've had that within 300 to 30 million years ago. So it's really incredible to see that these creatures have been around for so long. But it's also important to note their status today, how they're doing now, to see how we can help them and make them come around and stay around for millions of years more. So the current conservation status of the vivid dancer is least concern. Their population seems to be stable. All of these are great signs, meaning they are not endangered or going endangered or threatened in any way. So that's all good news. There are things to consider though in terms of conservation, and that's their wildlife. So with damselflies in the wild, it's a very good sign for healthy waterways, healthy streams, rivers, ponds. That's where they're going to inhabit after they lay their eggs, so pretty much stay their whole lives in these waters and streams. So the fact that there are damselflies prevalent in these waterways is a good sign for some healthy water. The water that's not polluted, toxic, or dirty. So the fact that the vivid dancer can be found all across Nevada is a good sign that we keep our waterways healthy and clean. So it's important to not only protect, but preserve what little water we have in Nevada and make sure to keep it clean. So I just wanted to give you guys a preview of the variety of places that I have seen damselflies, mostly in southern Nevada, as I did dragonfly and damselfly surveying for the Fish and Wildlife Service. So here we are with my biologist. We are in Ash Meadows, which is about 90 miles from Northwest Las Vegas. You can see the wonderful streams, looks nice and clean, supporting birds and plenty of damselflies as well. So that's a good sign for some great habitat. This picture, you can actually see Exploratory. This is in Moapa. This is about 60 to 70 miles northeast of Las Vegas. Exploratory is helping explorer Susanna take a picture of the damselfly that we were studying, keeping up on their population records. And then the last picture I have is actually the first one I showed you of my biologist Bruce Lund holding the vivid dancers. This one was actually taken about 10 minutes outside of Northwest Las Vegas at the Desert National Wildlife Refuge, which is the largest wildlife refuge in the continental U.S. So these guys are everywhere. You can find them anywhere where you have healthy water, healthy fresh water. So just keep an eye out for them. But of course, if you do see them, always view wildlife from afar. You never want to approach them. You can see in the pictures that we have some of them holding them, or me taking pictures of them very closely. This was all for a biological study and a published paper. I, on the other hand, would never ever approach wildlife otherwise. So I know we're practicing social distancing right now, keeping 6 feet away. Keep a little bit more, about 10 feet away from all wildlife that you encounter. Please leave them alone and let them prosper and survive in the wild. Well, that's all I have on the vivid dancer damselfly. I really hope you enjoyed this presentation, and if you haven't already, go ahead and download our Native Nevada Nature coloring page so you can get your own vivid dancer and color it the way that you want. I already did myself. And then you can participate in our next activity. It's going to be a crossword puzzle. And the cool thing about this crossword puzzle is that once you complete it, you can use the shaded gray tiles and unscramble those letters in order to reveal what the next plant or animal species I'm going to be talking about. So that will be released later on tonight, so please check that out and have fun completing it. And then tune in next Wednesday at 5 p.m. to see the next Native Nevada Nature presentation on our next plant or animal species. I'll be doing this every Wednesday, so make sure to tune in the Nevada Conservation League Facebook Live page. Well, I'll see you next week, and until then, happy exploring.